Hello, everybody. Welcome to this new episode where August Solliv. I'm very, very glad to be welcoming him here. Good afternoon, August. How are you?
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, having a great day. What about you?
I'm doing super well. I'm super glad to be having this conversation with you today because I'm reading your newsletter, and honestly, some of your readers of my readers comes from you, so thank you. And I recommend your newsletter as often as possible. So I'm very glad to be doing this interview today.
Thank you.
So directly jumping into the question. So why did you even start the newsletter in the first place? What was the sparking event?
Yeah. So maybe taking a little step back is I'm a big believer of impact in general through my career. It's always been a big part of what I'm doing and what I
Yes.
like to do. And so I like previously I built a small NGO. I've worked with startups, worked also in consulting and still do on sort of impact topics. And
Okay.
then I was spending a lot of time in the impact VC space when uh, when at some point I sort of realized I was lacking a resource myself, linking to impact ventures and investing in impact startups. And so yeah, that's why I created it, and that's sort of the story behind it. I think yes, spending time in the space and wanting a resource myself that I wasn't finding, then sort of helping other people have an impact and sort of get more finance and money into the epic space. And then I think it's also just to get more reflections amongst people and like share those reflections and get people to think about sort of what it means to invest in impact startups.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's a bit the story.
Yeah, it's super cool. So at some point in your newsletter, you switched from like a lot of knowledge. It was great. There was a lot of education on my side to VC interviews and to investors from the impact world. What made you change? What happened? You still like some knowledge articles sometimes, but it's more uh, once in a while, not regular. What happened there? So what was the thought process?
Yeah, it's true. I think the first articles I wrote were a lot of sort of things I was writing myself, and now I also interview a lot of VCs. And the reason why was I think I have some knowledge, but I'm sure I'm not the smartest in the whole impact VC space. And I mean, I think a bit like you today, right? There's something nice in interviewing people and getting their insights and sort of getting specialized knowledge on some topics. So, for example, for the articles I've written about water tech, agri-tech, the women's economy, and much more, also sort of more how to do investments in impact or carried interest in impact. And some of these topics, it's just super cool to be able to interview people and get specialized knowledge on. Um, and then, yeah, I think there's something nice in sort of getting people's voices out there, and it helps getting everybody to spend more time in the impact space, which is at the end the goal for me at least. And for many.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's what I do with Reactor, and I said, when everything can come from my head. Yeah, well, that's so thank you for the interview because also sometimes, I feel from my side that it's hard to distinguish some VCs from one another. It's even if they are pretty similar, but they really aren't. They are investing at different stage, and so it's hard to know from the website. They will invest in impact, but impact growth, impact seed, it's different. And from your description and the discussion you have, you can really guess like our take is like really for growth, it's impact for growth, and then that's really clear. And so you can only know through communication with the person. So thank you for this. I have a
I
question.
think
So because yeah, go
no,
ahead.
I was going to say I really spot on this because it's one of the largest issues for impact startups that are trying to fundraise. Even LPs that are looking at different funds is sort of trying to always figure out which one solves which question, right? And if
Yes.
you're a startup that tries to fundraise, it doesn't make sense to spend time talking with either angel investors or venture capital investors that are not fitting your scope or where you don't fit into their scope, right? Because the model of venture capital is that you raise funds as a venture capital fund or firm, and then that money comes from LPs, and you promise them certain things that you will invest in.
Exactly.
And in that model, I mean, that has a consequence on what the fund can then invest in terms of startups. So if you're a startup that doesn't fit into the model, there's no way you will ever get an investment from that VC fund. So yeah, I think it's really spot on trying to understand what each VC fund does.
And so do you actually keep track in I would love an Excel sheet of, maybe, from the interview, you just do just a cheat sheet from the VC. If you put it in an Excel sheet, that would be a great resource for us.
Yeah, no, it's actually something I have thought about at some point.
Okay.
I think there are already a lot of people that do sort of tables online with these VC firms invest in seeds, So I thought my value add was not the highest there. But I think it could definitely be true. And I think there's also something in sort of the special thing about impacts compared to maybe a bit more traditional VC fund, which is that when you are an impact VC fund, it's also a lot about how you see the world, how you think things will change in the world and in the ecosystem. And that sort of defines a little bit how you invest. So if you think that the world needs a lot of change in the fashion tech industry, right, then you will invest in some sort of solutions in the fashion tech industry. And sort of trying to understand how partners or anybody working at a VC firm thinks about different industries and solutions also sort of defines how they will invest and defines how you should approach them. So there's definitely some value in trying to understand this.
Great. I have a question because I'm more a video guy and a podcast guy, and I'm writing newsletters. I obviously read a lot. The more I listen, the better, because I read a lot as well. So why don't you just also record your interview? Is it a choice, or are you just exchanging emails with the person? Like, I don't know, you process. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I actually get that question quite a lot, and I really like what you're doing, Jerome. So I think there's a lot of value in podcasts as well. But what I like about newsletters is that in some way, in my mind, it feels like a purely intellectual exercise somehow. That you're only getting judged on the actual facts that's written down, and I think that there's some value in that. And then there's also something about the context of who your audience is. And I like, for me, the audience I have with my newsletter is impact VC investors primarily, and then you can say that will be impact startups, people in the impact space in general, LPs, even some students that read it. But the core is the impact venture investors, and my take on it so far is that they like reading it on either Sunday evening when they receive it or Monday morning when they come in. And so that I will. But I've also considered doing TikToks and stuff like that. But that might be a next step at some point. But no, I do actually interview, like I do calls with all the interviewees, so I could easily do a podcast. But
so it's cool that you summarize.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I do like your it's very synthetic, straight to the point. But from my point of view, I decided to add a podcast and YouTube layer. Also because, humans like human. And they tend to say, okay, I like this guy because, I like doing talks. And, I'm going to add one dimension to your story because I'm going to have this video on YouTube. And then say, okay, this song is, hello. And that's good because they just say, okay, now you're a new format. And, that's a marketing strategy too. That's your people like reading you, and then it will see you. So I was okay. I know obviously a little more than before. So that's the thing.
I think you're definitely right, and I think that's also why things work well, like from a marketing perspective, on some platforms where you see people, right? Like, why does YouTube work so well? Why does TikTok work so well? Because you see people and you sort of interact with them, or you feel like you interact. You don't really, right? But
you feel like you know that,
exactly.
That's it. That's marketing 101. By the way, did you receive any other opportunities from this side hustle that you're working on, except for this podcast?
Yeah, no, and thanks again for the invite. I think the things I usually do or get from doing a newsletter, right, is meeting a lot of cool people. So people I interview, but also just people reaching out. I mean, that's also how we met, which I'm super grateful for. I read your super cool. And then I've actually gotten a couple of, like, I get some deal flow in for startups that are looking for funding, or that they want to get a bit of analysis done on sort of pitch decks and stuff like that. Also gotten some job opportunities.
Oh,
And yeah, so I can really only recommend to get started, start writing, start doing a podcast like you're doing, Jerome.
perfect.
It's so much, it's a lot of value, right? And it takes some time, but it's you get to meet a lot of people, you learn a lot yourself. So yeah, super cool. What about you, Joe? Do you like it?
Oh
What
yeah, I
have
love
you
it. I love it.
found?
It's you said you with data. Um, but still, you can meet a lot of people. And I'm a sales guy, so I meet a lot of people still. But the thing is that you can shift to new people. People core like really core to my stress and motivation, all the internal motivation, and also something that will follow me after my job. It's something,
Yeah,
and that's the same for you. Even if you change jobs, it's gonna be like August, like for you, it's on you. It's a personal branding. And
but
so for me, it's a change in mindset because now, always thought to myself, what do I put when somebody asks me about, like your website and portfolio,
Mhm.
personal portfolio, or when I apply for something, and I was like, before I was like, nothing, I just LinkedIn, I send my LinkedIn profile. Now I'm like, what do I send? My newsletter, my YouTube, my podcast, and that's good. And also because, for me, it's a way to, even for the company I'm working for right now, it's a way to shine. For them, it's like, okay, obviously it's feeling well, Jerome is still well, so now it's shining, and if I'm working for a company, it's a benefit for them. It's a benefit. So for me, if someone is shining outside of work, great, and you can be shining with something else. I've seen people shining with outdoor activities, sports. That's great. There's nothing, there's no shame in that. That's I feel
Yeah.
so.
It's super nice when people get that extra value, kind of, and it's about wanting to try new things and stuff like that. Which I love it also in the newsletter sphere and the podcast sphere. Is yeah, people always trying to try new things and meet new people, which is a good vibe and a good environment to be in.
True. Yeah, and then you're surrounded by, like like-minded people, and that's great. Actually, I jumped into the podcast side because one of my friends, she was one of my coach in a training, and then she
Hmm?
became my friend. It's Christina. She's listening to this, and she told me, let's go, let's go. I have 500K followers on YouTube and LinkedIn. And I was like, wow. And she said, no, let's do a podcast together because I had helped a lot of deep tech companies and I'm not a deep tech. I was a teacher before, and you just need to start. And she helped me, start the first one, and then now it's rolling. I have this interview today, one on Tuesday, one on Friday. It's going, it's going well, it's going
That's so
well.
cool.
And the first call was hard, the second one was a little bit less harder, and that's it. It's going well. What are your ambitions with your well 2,000 followers now?
Yeah, yeah, no,
What's
it's going super well. I'm super happy. Yeah, around 2,000 people that read it every week, and that are sort of a lot of interactions with people, which I really appreciate. But I think for me, it's like I started because I wanted more sort of people to focus on impacts when they do venture investments, and more startups to grow in the environment, and sort of just be able to contribute a little bit to the impact venture and impact startup community. And I hope I'm able to contribute a little bit with it as it is right now. So yeah, super happy about that. But I think, yeah, my overall goal is sort of being part of this transition of getting more capital into impact topics, and I guess, even though it sounds a bit funny, make the world a better place in the end. And I think, yeah, I have one sort of intellectual idol on this front. I don't know. Have you heard of Sir Ronald Cohen? Is that a
no?
name that rings a bell? No. So he's a British, or he's from Egypt originally. Then he moved to the UK, and then he sort of built first a private equity fund, and then he sort of became a little bit of the founding father of impact investments. And
Okay.
his sort of primary goal is to get more capital into to sort of the impact space, and I believe a lot in that, and sort of trying to transfer money that today is being used for at least less impactful, like investing in less impactful, and moving that into impact pockets. And he's also the chairman of a lot of sort of impact investing initiatives around the world. He's also actually an interviewee in one of my future newsletters. So super interesting. So sort of trying to be able to get more capital into the impact investment field is sort of my end goal. And then I think you always have small targets in your head, right, of how many people you reach and stuff like that. But the main target is to sort of contribute to getting more capital into the impact space.
Great. It's a great transition actually to like the discussion on ecosystem, because there's been discussion that might be a bubble, because in 2023 that was the year where investments were the highest for climate, and it was highest ever in all industry, across the whole industries, and people are talking about the bubble. Of course, as bubble, when bubble, 2008 bubble, and so do you think that this bubble is here to stay?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? It's not the easiest one to answer,
Yeah,
if I have to be honest. I think that, so there's different things in it. I think the first part is that I mean, climate investments have decreased a little bit again after it hit the top, and I think that's an interesting trend, at least, but also part of sort of it's a consequence a little bit of higher interest rates, a more uncertain market. It's harder to fundraise, etc. So that's a bit of a consequence of that. So that's one thing. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the bubble is bursting, but it's more of it's a consequence of macroeconomic factors. But then I think to answer whether there's a bubble or not, then I guess first question is there a green premium today on some deals? And I think the answer is probably maybe on that, maybe yes.
Yeah.
At least you have quite high valuations and multiples in climate tech if you compare it to some other industries. But then again, these models are also super future proof, right? If you take a climate tech deal in general, it means that the startup has quite a good sort of probability for staying relevant in the coming years. So on that side, you could say yes, maybe it's a bit high valuation, but then it's also a consequence of being a future-proof model. But then the second question is then, is there a valuation bubble that will burst in 1 to 2 years? I guess is a question.
Yeah.
And it's hard to predict, right? But if I take a step back, if you look at sort of IPCC reports and sort of all the questions you look at from an environmental perspective, IPCC is saying that if you look at the solutions we already have today, then until 2030, you will already halve our global greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 with current solutions. But they also say that we do still need some solutions to be able to get to net zero by ideally 2050 or before.
Yeah.
And so if you say that you still need solutions and that these solutions are relatively fairly priced, maybe a little high, but relatively fairly priced, then it's hard to imagine a bubble that will burst in the next years just by saying that the solutions are actually necessary today. But that's not saying that it will never happen, but it's at least a reflection I have on my end. And then I think doubling down on that a little bit, like taking the theoretical perspective on it, there's a model called the Tapio decoupling model, which is sort of looking at, if you look at the country level, looking at GDP growth as well as CO2 emissions growth by country. And sort of that model, the idea with it is just that you look at sort of comparing those two growth rates with each other. And ideally, if you're looking to sort of reach half the emissions by 2030 or get to net zero by at least before 2050, then you need to, and you still believe in growth, right? Then you need to double your emissions. So the growth rate will increase, business or GDP growth will increase, but the CO2 growth will decrease at the same time. And the current solutions we have today are not allowing you to do that. It will allow you to do partly some of your emissions, but getting all the way down to net zero is going to be a longer process, and we need more innovations for that. So therefore, I still believe at least that climate tech will be a thing, and the problem might not burst anytime right now.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said about the fact that those companies, those solutions are impact based. So, they're not made for the sole purpose of making money and making growth. And they are, they are for example, trying to solve problems for society. Uh, and so reducing waste or, making more people or hiring more people. So at the end of the day, they're making money, but they're not an NGO anymore. They need to make money. And the thing is, as they will have positive impact on the company, sector as a whole, it might not be a bubble because they will also generate other people contributing to other solutions, and that this kind of like rippling solutions
Yeah,
or
rippling effect.
that's a great
And I really agree to that. And then you can maybe say maybe the valuations are a little bit too high. And so the models are future proof, but the valuation is a little bit too high, and then it's a small bubble that's bursting. But completely bursting and completely disappearing from the face of the earth is probably a little unrealistic, at least in the current state. But if I
it's
can
like
add,
every industry. It's like
yeah,
every industry where, like the leaders will emerge and there will be a crisis, like less investment in 5 years. But then, the one who are the most resilient companies, they will survive and they will thrive. And that's why, company we talked all off was too good to go and that's been here for 8 years already, suffering, COVID and everything. And I guess, those kind of companies, they prove impactful and resilient, they will stay. They're not here they're here to last. So that's a great, talking about like topics as well, by the way. According to you, you made a lot of different interviews, a lot of different topics, investment matters and experts. What do you think are, the hottest topics in impact, where we are focusing right now, maybe not focusing according to you?
yeah. It's a broad question, right? It's not the easiest to answer, but I think sort of looking at it, I would again go a little bit theoretical, but it's not because it's interesting to be theoretical, but it's more because it's interesting to look at where money is flowing today, and then where it could be flowing in the future, right? And so if you compare sort of where capital in early stage investments in venture is going today, or has
Yes.
been going in the last years, and you compare that to where the sort of the greenhouse gas emissions have been in the last years as well, and you can see sort of if there are some sectors that are getting more capital than what their greenhouse gas emissions represent. And some of the sectors here that you see that has received a lot of capital are mobility would be one, energy is also one, and then those are probably the over sort of financed sectors, and then you have
Yeah.
some that are a little less financed, which would be more agriculture or industry or the built environment as well. So I would probably take it a bit like at a big sort of topic
Yeah.
level, and I would at sector level, and I would say that agriculture and big industries and construction are some of the things I would look more to. There's actually a graph of this we might be able to put in the speaker notes if you want, or if we can. That might be that would be cool. Where you see the split. So that's at a sort of a high level, seeing what sectors are most interesting. And then sort of apart from that, I think it depends a lot on what stage you're investing in. So
Okay.
I think you're not looking at the same things at pre-seed or as you would
True.
at Series B,
Yeah.
right? But I think from the interviews I've had and seeing what from what I hear, there's a trend to try to invest more and more in hardware. So investing
Okay.
in deals where there's hardware components and so less sort of SaaS models. Not saying you're not investing in SaaS, but less. And that's a trend based on saying sort of when you're fixing real problems, like physical problems, then
Yeah.
you also need physical solutions for some of them at least. Climate change is a physical problem, so you need some physical solutions to grow. So I think that's one, like the movement
Hardware.
towards hardware. And here there's some great funds that are making great playbooks. There's a Planet A, Norskin, and Speed Invest. They made a playbook on hardware. And then there's a couple, I think, hoping I don't forget anyone, but Contrarian and EQT Ventures made one sort of a small playbook called Climate Brick as well. That could also be interesting to put in the speaker notes that are sort of explaining how to invest in hardware and how investors are looking at different components in hardware. But yeah, so that would be one. And then the other one, I think that's also a bit of a financing gap is more at growth stage. So
Yeah.
putting in money at growth stage, because there's quite a lot of early stage climate tech and impact tech that have received funding, but then now they're arriving at a maturity level where they need Series B, C, and D investments, and there is less capital available at that stage. So that's also a
Sure.
bit we're
Yeah,
seeing right
like
now.
tickets of like 100 million euros, to industrialize. But yeah, I agree with that.
Exactly, and
Yes.
even a bit before, I would say it starts already at when you get to ticket size, or when you're looking for investment rounds at like 25, 30 million up until
Okay.
the 100 million. Then there is a gap and not enough financing currently. But that's something that the European Investment Fund is working on, and a lot of LPs have in their targets.
So like is it a European thing, or is it you can go to the US or to Asia or wherever to get those like large tickets?
Yeah, so I would say in Europe in general, there's a growth equity funding gap that is less existing in the US.
Okay.
But that's a general growth equity, not necessarily in the impact space. But then in the impact space specifically, then there's an even larger funding gap in Europe. And the reason why there's a difference here is that looking at the growth equity space, non-impact deals, then deals are usually larger, so 50 to 100 million, the big ones that you mentioned.
Yeah, these
But then also the 25 to 50 in the impact space, where maybe companies are a little less mature, that are not getting so financed, and where you also need more funding currently. Yeah, so there's a bit of a difference, but some of it is can be financed in the US. Yes, so if some startups are looking to go to the US, then that's definitely also.
Yeah, it can be tricky because I've seen those companies they might raise in the US where the market is not really in the US because impacts they see impacts in a different way from compared to us. They are in different stage. They're still interested in making profits. If there is a business, they're great. And I've talked to people in Asia. We are going much faster into our line in terms of impact in Europe than in the US and even more Asia. And even if the checks can be higher, maybe the mentality is not there. So that's that's where there is a problem. I've seen that in your interviews. Some guys say we need more fund into growth, the VC growth, but they say that it's going to happen because we've been building impact startups for 10 years now, say 20 years. And I also didn't, I was not into the environment at that point. But there was already a first climate, 1.0 climate, not bubble, but climate interest. And now we are the second 2.0. And then so we got some exposure almost 15 years ago before the crisis. That's on our first days, early days. So the market is being mature. We're getting there. But, takes time as well.
Yeah, but I think the reading I'm getting from both interviews and spending time in the space is also that the market has matured a lot in the last 5 years. A
Okay.
lot more funds are existing, and a lot more believe in sort of both having impact and profits at the same time and at the same level. So there is a general maturity in the ecosystem, but it's true that at the beginning of the 2000s, there was a clean tech 1.0 bubble that then burst because a lot of startups were scaling but not arriving. Either they wouldn't be able to sort of get growth equity deals, or
Okay.
they were getting there, but then they were not reaching the profitability and the sort of being able to survive when both the financial crisis hit, but also never really reaching profitability because of more sort of macroeconomic factors. So, but now we have sort of there's more sort of renewable energy solutions that are making it possible to become economically viable as a climate tech solution, for example. And then social is a bit different because it's of course not part of it was not part of Clean Tech 1.0. But yeah, but you can definitely also make returns in the social side.
Yeah. So yeah, that's, let you wait also transition to my next question because I am in this impact world as well. I see all the startups, the VCs and everything getting ready. And sometimes, when I talk to my neighbors and everybody, there might be like a difference. Even if in Europe we're getting there, when you see, companies like 1.5 great company, but they raised like 400 million euros. But then again, raising again, crazy. But they're buying companies, little cloud, they're buying, installation company for solar panels, and I don't see solar panels everywhere. I live in Paris, so, I don't see that all around. And I say, there's a gap because, I don't see really people massively investing in their own personal life into this. Do you think, what's your take on this? Is it more like a B2B approach that we are now than B2C? But like the general economy needs to follow because otherwise there is no change. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's actually one that I'm also looking at in my day job. And what we're usually seeing is that willingness to pay is higher in B2B than in B2C. A bit as you're saying that
Yes.
there is in general sort of a trend towards a higher willingness to pay in B2B. So I guess you could say so that people are maybe not taking it upon themselves to really buy the sort of sustainable solutions. But it comes from different things. It comes both from a sort of a lot of companies setting targets to sort of reduce their emissions, and then it's a consequence from that their willingness to pay increases, and that comes from public pressure, comes from politicians, comes from sort of some having to meet some quotas and be part of the EU trading scheme. So it's not direct. It's hard to say or you could probably say it's more of a B2B than a B2C play, but there's sort of outside factors that actually affect why it's becoming potentially more B2B play than a B2C play in the environments. I don't know what your read is on it, whether you've seen some of the same things. What do you think?
For me, impact is still a huge divider with people. I see that I am, convinced, and I miss you. You are too. And then
Yeah.
you are like the non-believer. There's still people watching, and they don't know. There are also people like fiercely again, that they don't want to stuck in back. They don't want to. They just see more restriction, and that's for me. That's blocking the way into massively, implicating everyone. The fact that not company has to change the way it's good because it's still like we're doing exactly the same as before, but without waste, without more, wasting resources like waste,
Yeah.
like energy and everything. And people start to realize that they can do exactly the same way. And that's a good part. That's a good part that is coming, but it's coming from laws and restriction on the company. It's bad, but that's humans work. But yeah, we're still waiting for like a massive adoption. And for me, I travel by bike all the time, like public transportation, and that's good. But that's not the majority in France. It's still like the cars industry is big, but we're getting there because electric cars and everything. But still, you need to look at the way the electricity is produced. It's a never-ending question. We can discuss for hours about this. It's gonna be like two hours for a podcast. But
I don't know.
still,
No.
we can discuss for hours. For me, I think that that's good because the offer is getting higher, so that more and more offers to the general public about the same thing. You know, we do into like a non-waste or reduce waste options, low energy, low cost, and getting holidays in France instead of Thailand. I love
Mm.
Thailand, but if you can go to somewhere in France, it's better if you're French. And so the thing is, people are starting to realize that you don't need to travel the entire world just to get the same experience. And so you have the option, like you get more option, more green options. So it's getting in a way. But we could do more marketing on this, like more, be stronger, to go, you go like wine, crazy for me. But that's my point of view.
Yeah, and I think you can definitely probably do more. You can always do more, I assume.
Nah,
But
it
then there's
counts.
always the balance of how sort of receptive people are and
Sure.
what impact it has as well. Because it also has quite a bit impact when B2B players are changing, and potentially less when one B2C person is won over and taking. So there's always that debate. But yeah, it's super interesting, and it's also interesting to see when you're looking at startups, because it also has an implication on what sort of startups are succeeding, and because if you are a startup building B2B plays and the willingness to pay is higher for B2B, then that can be an advantageous spot to sit in. But then again, a B2C play might work just as well.
Yeah.
So definitely it depends a lot.
That's a good transition again to my next question. Do
You're
you
welcome.
you sometimes analyze yourself some startups, and how do you do? If I say you're a startup right now, you work good time, or but do you consider, if you imagine it's a 10 people startup in Denmark right now, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm in Copenhagen.
Right. Yeah, because let's say it's a Danish company, 10 people doing impact. Just no more. I just don't tell you no more. Like, yeah, two founders. What do you do?
Yeah.
What do you,
No, but yes. So I do impact analysis on impact startups, both for previous work, but also now, because I still
yeah,
help some startups sort of more as from an advising perspective. But then I guess the key when you're looking at an early stage startup, as you just mentioned, right, would be
yeah,
the team. There will always be the key role. You can say in impact, maybe the team question is also whether their values aligned, and whether the values align with you as a potential investor, but also among themselves. But it's also about sort of why are they the right ones to solve this question? What value do they have? What's the complementarity among them? I think that's the core question that you would ask yourself, and then you have a lot of other questions that you can ask besides that, which would be looking at the addressable market. How big is it? Is it realistic that it grows enough for you to return your money in your fund?
yeah,
Or you can ask how defendable is the solution that they're building, depending on whether it already exists, etc. But when you're very early stage, you also expect quite a lot to change. And you can also look at the funding round, how financially interesting it is. But so there's other questions you can ask around, but the team will be the core question when you're at early stage, because it's sort of the people you have, these 10 people will probably pivot through your investment, sort of the time you're holding, the investment period. So that comes back to it. But then of course the solution is still interesting, because you want to know in which direction this team is going. But yeah, so that's some of the things I
that's
would be
you.
looking at. Yeah.
Okay. And so, and for example, if it's a not hardware company, then let's say it's a nuclear energy company, do you dive in a little bit into the numbers, or you say, the team is relevant because, the CTO is a nuclear guy from, whatever, CA in France, that they use 20 years of experience, and you say, yeah, if they show me these numbers about, they're going to produce, for example, industrial eight,
Mm.
like has a well, we're at. Do you actually dive in, because you said hardware is a hot topic in impact, and so the two is important, and that then there's the tech factor, tech risk in both. How would you handle this like tech side on your side?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and there's probably a difference in how I would look at it now as a one person, just thinking about whether I would help the company or not, and sort of
Sure.
supporting them, and what you would do in a due diligence for like a venture capital fund. And I think that is probably the second part that's more interesting. And when you're a VC fund, what you would then spend time on, of course, as I said, team, also solution, addressable market, defendability of where they're going in the solution. But you would also need to understand the technical parts of what's happening. Doesn't mean you need to be an expert, but you need to understand sort of what's going on, what are they solving, what's the impact in the end of doing what they're doing. Because in general, when you're looking at these impact solutions, what you're trying to find is a model where impact is aligned with profit. So whenever you increase your sort of impacts, then it also increases your business growth. And therefore, sort of understanding the technicalities is also valuable to understand the business growth properly. But then taking a sort of a step back again, it also depends a lot on the stage you're looking at a company in. So you said 10 people, right? Then
Yeah,
it's a quite early stage company, and you
yeah,
would usually say then you look at what's called the technology readiness level, TRLs. And you use those, and they go from 1 to 9, and you use them to evaluate how far in the technological development the startup is, and sort of at an early stage you accept maybe level 3 to 5, depending on what type of investor you are. If you're a deep tech investor, you accept early sort of a lower level of TRL. If you're a non-deep tech and non-technical investor, you will look for sort of higher TRLs. Whereas at growth stage, you look for maybe a startup that's already at 8 or 9 TRL, because you want the startup to be pretty much done with all technological developments and just be hitting or going on marketing and going on growth. So it depends a lot on sort of what stage you're in and sort of how you're looking at the company. But usually TRLs are one of the standards for looking at sort of deep tech.
yeah, that's a good approach actually. Yeah, say, and also if you imagine you invest in the company and after TL3, and you believe in the technology, you found it with some external experts, the technology, and you say, okay, next time we do in 18 months, we do another Series A, but then we'll be TRL 6, and that's, my money will be used to go from 3 to 6. And you guys need to go from 3 to 6. Otherwise, they're like, you invested the money, it's a risk, you made that risk. You took that risk. But the thing is, it goes from 6 and you are early investor and it works. It actually works. You get it. Definitely get it works.
No, but
um,
it's exactly that. That's how you use the TRLs, and that's how you sort of change from as you grow with the company. Then that's how you do it. And also when you're doing an analysis in TRL, usually if you're a non-technical investor team, then you will also first get the TRL sort of analysis done by the startup itself. So they sort of say where they are at. Then you do some analysis on it yourself, and you get externals in to sort of just certify or ensure that you are at a certain TRL level compared
yeah,
to
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
expectations.
validated by an external party, something like that.
Exactly.
That one question I get always, when I guess I talk to VC myself, it's a startups is I'm really back now to reach profitability, and if I ever reach profitability, and sometimes it's even hard because some of the founders they say afraid of talking about money, but they're not NGOs, so they're not for profits, so they need to generate money, and so is there like a guide for them to say, okay, I can balance and find profitability in with an investor.
Yeah, it's I think the answer is probably that there's not a balance directly, because I mean,
It's
if
a lot of
everybody knew
work.
how to get commercial success, then I guess VC funds would not fail on half of their portfolio, right? I mean, that's the reality of an early stage fund, is to pretty much fail on half of it and don't get any returns on that. So I think there's no golden rule, but I think there's two parts of it. Is how do you ensure that your business has commercial success, and then it is how do you reach profitability. And ensuring that you have commercial success depends a lot again on whether you're a hardware or software business, but it's all about demand in the end. So a software business, it's about proving the demand early and getting out to the client. Hardware business, you can often prove it with takeoff agreements or sort of different contracts that you sign before even building the final product, and potentially having scaled a certain factory. And then reaching profitability is another question, because it's often it will always be a duel between increasing growth and increasing profits or reaching profitability. So at some point, usually in a startup's journey, you also go from accepting that you have sort of accept less growth, but then you start having profitability. And that's a fairly natural cycle that you reach at some point.
Yeah, because you might burn a lot of money and then, reach some kind of level that say, okay, if I just, let go some of the people, I will have the same profit, same amount of work. We can achieve it with 25% less people and still have a great impact on the environment. And that's, a calculation that you can only do if you reach that point in time.
Yeah.
You need to reach it. That's hard. It's hard.
I think
And
ideally you probably don't let people go, but you stop growing or something, I guess. That's the
yeah,
ideal
true.
business.
Yeah, you stop
You,
growing,
you
but
just,
maybe you don't need excessive growth. You just
yeah,
have the impact, and that's it. And also, what I like also what you said is like even if you're going out where and you have you reach commercial success, you are your ecosystem. For example, you are doing a nuclear reactor, of course, to just 10 people right now, but still, who is interested in your solution and will be 5 years from now? Who needs industrial eats, and you can say, okay, you're right now with 10, you're not able to, give you something, but you maintain the relationship with them, now with 10, will be 100 in 3 years, and we'll have a small reactor ready, prototype, and this type of history relationship, even if it's the late stage, a growth stage, they know why they know you're coming, and they say, when, now, that's a good way to say, hey, we're there. We made progress. And we'll be ready. And they might say, we might. I feel it's 2027. We might because social is probably like 100 times cheaper and that's a good way. There's sometimes people forget about this solution. That's what I don't know if you're familiar with Virgin Galactic when they sell the
no.
tickets. Now with Galactic was like the orbital system where you can go to space for a few minutes, and even before the plane was designed, they sold like tickets to come in your own tickets, and the thing was booked, overbooked. And that's
Yeah,
fake. And we had the money actually to actually build the plane, even if nothing was ready because why was Richard Branson, so this famous. But the thing is, he was able to do a plane, so they say you just gotta be able to do a spacecraft now. But
yeah.
still, and it fell. It fell. It actually fell. But the early adopters took a risk and they say, let's try to get it built. And it's hard. It's the tech. It's the tech. Sometimes it doesn't work. But if you were in Elon Musk, you put the money back in the beginning. It worked. It worked well. It
Yeah.
worked well.
And I think also going back to, we said team is the key, but there's also nothing that's convincing VCs more than if you already can show intent from a buyer. If you can already say, I have already reached all these customers and they're already paying for it, or I have a letter of intent from X or Y customer, then that's pretty much proving that at least there's some value in what you're trying to do. So just a side comment.
No, yeah, that's a great advice. Also, from let's say more an external perspective, or someone who doesn't have really like a startup or a VC, and I get requested a lot, and that's why I'm asking you the question. Say, okay, I don't have like you a newsletter, or I don't have a job in impact, but I want to have more impact on every day. And there are some people reaching out to me like, I want to have more impact. What can I do? Do you have any like tips you can say? What can you do as a citizen to increase your impact?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think on the one hand side, you can say Muhammad Yunus, the guy who invented microfinance and sort of
Yes.
Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, he said all humans are born to be entrepreneurs or something in that light,
Yeah.
in that way. And I think there's something true in that everybody can sort of create something from scratch if they believe that they want to have an impact and really are guided by it. But if you then say, maybe that's not for me, then I think the most important thing you can do is to get on board with people and sort of create a collective around some similar ideas and people that are trying to push for something. So you can do that at your job or you can do that
Yeah.
at home. But it's being multiple people around one topic is usually what drives impact in the end as a group.
Yeah, and it could be just like getting visuals in the local area, food public,
For
do
sure.
something like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, it's small steps already helped, and I think it's also a lot about getting into the sphere when you're not very impact focused. So beforehand, it depends a lot on your profile, right? But if you've not spent so much time in the impact on the climate sphere, then it's a lot about just starting with the small steps, and then at some point you have a podcast or a newsletter, like
Exactly.
then
No,
you
no,
go.
it's happening. Happening this. I agree. Question about but you're familiar, and when you said you were helping some startups, on the side advising and get some contact with them. It's like, it's also a question I get all the time. It's like, how do I raise money? And in there, you imagine I have impact startups. I'm running it right now. I have some buyers interest, maybe some money in the bank. We are like 3 founders. And I'm raising, my seed level, 2 billion euro. What should I do? Where should I? Is there a conference I absolutely need to be? Do I find them on LinkedIn or, how to find their investors? What should I do? How can you do? Yeah,
Yeah, it's going to be according to my experience, but I think the first part I would actually say is just it's not even sure that you have to raise money, right? It's a bit taking the questions another way around, but I think
yeah,
the key point is that everybody thinks that you have to raise money with venture capital investors, but that's only fit for certain types of startups that are looking for hyper growth, that are looking to then continue this growth journey where you have a lot of people that rely on you and that are following you throughout the journey. You can also build for profitability a bit, as you said before, without looking for VC investments. I think that's the first sort of point I would give, and I usually say to people is that you shouldn't always look for it. It depends a little bit on what you're trying to build. Then I think, I think conferences it can be a way of finding people. LinkedIn is as you said, great tool. Like you can reach out to pretty much anyone. You can send decks their way. Usually, for most VCs have a link on their websites or somewhere where you can upload a deck. Usually, it will often be screened actually, because they have analysts or interns that sit and screen them. You can then say, is that really the best way to get to anyone? Probably not. I think the fifth point here is that the best way to get to anyone is to get there through recommendations. Even though it is extremely annoying, a hot recommendation from someone who actually knows someone in VC or someone who knows someone 3 branches out will always be higher value than posting it somewhere. But there is other ways around. Like you can also start building in public on LinkedIn and then hoping that people will hear about you that way. Or you can do more marketing. You can join a podcast or a newsletter or try to sponsor a podcast and newsletter. There is different ways you can do these small growth hacks. So I think just again, what I would really think about if I was a startup trying to fundraise would be finding the fund or the angel that fits what you're trying to look for. So if you're a German company, usually you will go for finding angel investors in Germany because that's where people usually invest. And then finding funds that are investing in either your industry or your type of like either software or hardware, specifically your type of technology, that also requires some research work. So I would also do that. More than believing that you can go at a conference and meet anyone, then I think it's more about doing the work upfront. But then again, of course, it will always be a quality game. At the end, you will get a lot of no's, but it's not because your idea is bad, it's just because it doesn't fit what people are looking for. So that was a lot, but I think the conclusion of that is that you should look to find an investor that really fits your profile, and then you should consider if you even need an investor or not.
True.
And then lastly, you can find growth hacks in many different ways: conferences, LinkedIn, newsletters, reaching out to people. There's different ways, but you also at some point you just need to put in the time. There will always be a bit of a quantity game in it.
Yeah, actually, you know that I like the tips on reaching out to other startups where you're a dream VC, dream investor invested already as well, because you get to use some human connection. And you get some feedback because one of the stereotype that we have, like people generally have with VC is that it's a one-way relationship. Like the VCs control the entrepreneur, but that's not true. It's a two-way relationship, and the most valuable VC on the planet, they actually they are entrepreneurs recruiting, advertising, raising the next fund, the next fundraising. So it's a two-way relationship. So getting to know if I reach out to this company who got tickets from this VC, I might as well say, what's your relationship with this guy? And this is like they are great, like with guys, you're good for it. And then if they put in recommendations for you, that's cool. Thanks for the tips. That's great to remind people that you don't always need to raise money. That's a
Yeah,
great way. Bootstrap companies are great too. But no, that's
doing
good.
all
That's
of that.
there's actually cheat sheets online where you can say, do you really need to raise money? Because that's you want to have your article on TechCrush just to say raise money, but that's not breaking business team. That's just smart. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
We reached the end of the conversation. Thank you, Olive. Do you have any last word for our audience? Something to announce? Later, something happening or just
No,
final remark?
I think thank you a lot for the invite. I really appreciate the chat. I think it's always super interesting to talk about impact, and I think, as I said, the most important is to get more capital and more startups in the impact space, and I think that's a great note to finish on.
Yeah, so we encourage you to raise funds and and get more money inside. And you guys, as a citizen, invest as an angel, whatever you can do. So
Exactly.
I think it really is nice. Thank you guys for the conversation. Thank you everybody for watching, listening, or wherever you were ready. I have a transcript for this interview. Thank you, Olive. Good luck with everything you do. Continue with this letter. I will continue reading it, and I will put the link everywhere to find you on LinkedIn or find you on newsletter. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, bro.
Have a good day. Thanks for leaving. Bye.
Bye bye.